Hello, Phoenix Pirates. War Officer here, Ninja Kinder, coming to you with the next episode of Fleet Builds. Alright, debuting by popular vote here is the Mercury. Now, the Mercury can do good in two situations, and this is used as a missile hull or used as a launcher hull. Sacrilege. Now, for the first run of the missile hull builds, here we have. Now, this would be a more top end build. Is the Siege Z missile, along with Bulkhead, Evade. Now, these will excel at many things, missions mostly, and they will excel in lower end bases. They're not going to go inside and crush a level 85 or anything, unless he really sucks. But they they do excel in missions. Now, this is a heavier armor build. Now, this is higher up in armor at the sake of a little bit of firepower. Obviously, if you have a lower dock, lower shipyard, and I've said this before, and don't quite have the tech, you'll have to substitute out certain things. Now, this one here is a launcher build. Once again, this one's a little bit more heavier on the defense end. This is a heavier defense launcher build. Now, this will excel at missions. It'll excel at most bases that you can outrange everything in, which is range of 94, which essentially means unless they are rocking some 95 range Arbalist in there, or some Atlases, or Enforcer, you should relatively outrange them in every aspect. That's the heavier build set for these, and these will also do good in the mission. I know you're probably looking over here at the 17.1 second shockwave time of the D98. Now, with one boat, yes, it's probably going to take you roughly around that time to pull a shockwave off. But if you take a look at the fleet stats here, let's see here, yeah, right there. With the entire fleet build as such, you'll be looking at a shockwave every 3.4 seconds, and that's without any rank. Naturally, if you had access to it or not, I mean, the Gaull Supercharger would be an okay special to also go with on this boat. So would the Fusion Chargers, although I doubt many of you lower guys will have access to that said tech. Anyhow, next over here, this is a heavy defense, heavy assault build. Now, the kind of like the previous one, basically almost the same setup, aside from no anti. Now, some people prefer anti, some people don't. But if we take a look between this one and the previous, you notice you have a quicker shockwave time at a little less armor, and you don't have any anti. That means missiles are going to get through, they're going to likely hit you, and cause a fair bit more damage for you. But this is also going to put a fair bit more damage out for you than the other. Now, coming up next here, we got the second missile hull, which is this is slowly starting to become standard tech. I mean, the D5 armors, I know not necessarily standard tech, but usually the D3 or D4 versions of them you can get a hold of relatively easy. Now, the Siege Z missile, once again, comes around frequently, or did come around frequently at one point, so most of you in the groups who aren't new should probably have access to these. But this is a 3 siege on each boat. Now, this is kind of similar how I have mine built, and I've got 3 refitted to this at the moment. I still have 2 more boats to get around refitting, but that goes back into refit time versus build time, etc., etc. Now, with 3 of these like this, like I said, mine's got a little different than this, but 3 of them like this, I easily can do 265s. Which I know now with the 50 million elite tier, that's probably not much of Jack Diddley squat, but if you're one of the guys who's just struggling to try to get to tier 2 or tier 3, this fleet can help you get there. It will definitely help you get there. Now, like I said, if you have lesser versions of the armor, it'll still work okay. It may not do 65s at that point, but it'll still do some of the lower targets like 40s, 34s. I mean, you could probably do 47s and 55s, but I really wouldn't recommend the 47 because you take about as much damage as you do in a 55, and it's 55 is worth almost double what that 47 is worth. Now, on to our next popular vote. Another one was the strike cruisers. Now, even some of you little guys should have some of the tech. Not all of this, but some of it, most likely, given recent raids and a lot of our bigger guys giving you a hand. Now, this is a rocket version of this boat. Now, this boat is inherently was meant to be a rocket and mortar boat. But much like the Mercury, it can also be used for a launcher boat. We'll be getting into that in just a few minutes. Now, this here is a rocket fleet here. Now, typically, and as any veteran fleet builder will tell you, when it comes to a rocket fleet, you won't want to rock 4 to 5 boats. But in this particular scenario, it's okay. With your lesser rocket boats, you can do that. Where it's effective on a setup like this is effective for this boat in particular, it wouldn't be quite as effective for, say, a Hellstrike or a Gore Saber. Now, this one specifically, the strike cruiser, typically easily obtained. I know most raids that I've seen it around in, it's usually popping off at 1 mil or 2 million points, which is usually easily acquired, even if you're a little guy grinding it out. Now, as you see here, we got 2 Dragonfires on here and 1 lockdown rocket. Now, yes, some of you little guys who struggle to get to Tier 3, you may not have the lockdown rockets yet. And that's fine. You don't have to put them on there even if you don't want. This is just slow boats down a little bit, essentially. You could easily put something else on there, such as a siege cannon to give yourself a little bit of a speed boost. Now, the combat speed on this inherently is at this setup is 17.6. Yes, typically you would want to have at least around 20. But you'll get that as you retrofit your engines and such. Or if you set your fleet up to have some combat boosting stuff on there. And that would involve siege cannons, cryogenic depth charges, and blaze throwers. Because no torpedoes on these bad boys. Now, this will do fairly good in a lot of player bases, actually, and the rate the game's going now, even a lot of level 60 bases, this would probably excel in them pretty good, especially with rank. Now, I'll tell you now, I'm not typically a person for the Explosive System 3 on the bigger rocket holes for Hell Strikes, Gore Sabers, because they have enough of a negative spread bonus already to them, but this boat doesn't inherently come with a good negative spread, so this I highly recommend for this boat. Definitely recommend this special over top of the high explosive shells. Now, moving over to our right to the next fleet, we have the mortar fleet. Once again, you may or may not have the tech for this, but you can compensate via researchable tech and unresearchable tech. Like, for example, and this goes for any of the boats here. For example, say you don't have D5X, well, you can go with your standard researchable RA3 or your AA3 or your LA3, and change as you go along and have time to do so. And it can be the same for the morts. I mean, this is the most effective mortar setup. I'm not going to pull your leg there. But if you only have access to the researchable tech, then just go with dip morts unless you have peacemakers. Those are also good to go with once you get to them, research. And if you happen to have won the negotiator morts, those would actually be a pretty nice mortar to put on there because they got a short flight time, they add no armor to the boat, and they put out some nice damage versus fleets and even versus buildings. And I said this is help. This would be nice for some player bases. It could be potentially nice in submission targets, but it's all a matter of player preference. I mean, you might be the guy that loves mortar fleets. You might be the guy that loves rockets or launchers or throwers. I mean, it's all boils down to player preference. Now, this here is a launcher fleet. And yes, this is the new launcher, which, once again, I think most of you guys should have access to, even the little guys, because I do believe in this most recent raid that we really everybody, all the big guys pumped out, and even some of the little guys pumped out a lot of work to acquire at least the weapon. And that weapon is a valuable tool. It does a lot of damage, and it really puts a pounding on the enemy. And it excels in basically both suits, building damage and fleet damage. Now, this setup here, once again, you may not have this high of an armor. You just compensate with what you have. Use the best you possibly can use. I mean, and if that includes researchable tech, that's perfectly fine. I mean, you can't use what you don't have. But if you have it, I definitely suggest building it like this. It's about as good as you're gonna get it. You can change out the D5E if you want to. If you're not big on evade, if you're big on more resistance, then use the D5U. And if you're big on radioactive defense, use the D5R if you actually was able to get up there and win that. Now, here in specifically, you got the speed system, D5X, and the guy and scrambler. Guy and scrambler I kind of threw in there just as one of the researchable techs to compensate. Now you could use things like the agility system 3, or the reflective coating. I got tongue tied there. Tad tried to kiss me. And this fleet will excel in base hits. It will excel in mission. It will, quite frankly, in most cases, depending upon the raid type, it will excel in raids. And I've seen this firsthand, as far as mainly any fleet or decent boat with this new launcher. It excels in almost every aspect. So definitely would consider above probably the rest of these, probably to go with the launcher builds, because the launcher builds are going to be your most effective thing right now, to tell you the truth. I mean, and definitely probably a lot more bang for your buck at the current moment. Now, our fearless leader asked me to show a Mercury build with ballistics. Well, just a shout out to our fearless leader, Swabby. I couldn't even remotely think of a build dumb enough to debut. Isn't that pitiful? Anyways, all you Phoenix pirates out there, this is your War Officer Ninja Kinder telling you to have a good week and come back next week. Be sure you comment on the page. Tell me what kind of boat you would like to see, what kind of build you would like to see, and I'll try to make it happen for you. Try to get you a little leg up in the game here so you can stand on your own feet, sail your own ship. We're tired of having to drive for you. Time to learn how to drive. Bunch of water out there, not many bases to run into. We'll get you taught one way or another. Have a good week, Phoenix Pirates.